Right, Max and his fancy new wrench bank breaker. Right, so the Armory deck is coming out, and it is very, very exciting because it is kind of a new archetype, right, for mechanologists. So we're very interested to see what types of cards pop up in support of it. Now, we're in sort of a lull for Fab, right, before all the major stuff starts up again. So it means I have quite the lot of time to look into combos, right? The stuff I really, really enjoy just theory crafting. So why don't we do that with Bankbreaker, right? Because basically anything that's on board that has combo potential really, really shrinks the hoop you have to jump through when it comes to Flesh and Blood. So yeah, Bankbreaker is very, very promising, right? A proccable overpower and go again, right? That's already huge in itself because if you can get the go again, you really don't need the action points to make use of its twice per turn attack, right? So yeah, what else do we have to go with it? Well, there's a comparison that I do want to make first and foremost, and that is in comparison to the Nitro Mechanoid, right? The sort of Yu-Gi-Oh-esque Exodia payoff that Max or Mechanologist had, mainly Max, because with the hyperdrivers he's kind of a little bit more built for it, right? So Nitro Mechanoid, action, bash a card under this, and you get to attack. It has overpower, it's 5 power rather than 3, but altogether, it is kind of similar to me to Bankbreaker, right? Bankbreaker, I think, is LSS's big attempt to make Nitroid a bit, easier to access, right? Because the hoop you do have to jump through for construct, for instance, right? You have to transform every piece of equipment you have along with a weapon and hyperdrivers, right? So you have to get the hyperdrivers on board. You have to maintain all your equipment. You can't take all these other pieces. If you're destroying your equipment to get any sort of use out of them, then it will disallow you from creating nitro. So yeah, Bankbreaker is exciting in that sense, especially when we have the other revealed card, Clamp Press. So Clamp Press is a +2 to your wrenches while it's on board, meaning that Bankbreaker becomes a twice per turn attack, right? That's 5 power and can proc overpower, right? So you're basically trading the cost that Bankbreaker has for the setup that Nitro has, right? So I'd call that a very, very better split, right, in terms of Bankbreaker, because a pay 1 to attack versus the setup of Nitro, much, much easier to accomplish. And then you have a banish a card underneath it, similar to Nitro, to gain its proccable effect, but you don't have to use it, right? If you run out of resources for Nitro, well, you're in trouble. Now, obviously, the hope is that the cards we get from the Max Armory deck not only help with Bankbreaker, but they also help resupply Nitro, and Nitro itself could be still a nice, devastating payoff that eventuates. But, generally speaking, I like Bankbreaker, right? Bankbreaker has a lot of potential. So again, already a twice per turn, pay 1, chance to, or a somewhat ability to proc overpower such go again. My initial thinking is this has to be something that's at least triggerable every other turn. So it has to be somewhat of a common ability that Max will be getting in the Armory deck, right? So there has to be a decent chunk of the new cards dedicated to putting cards under your weapon or under something on board. I think overall Evos and the other sets of Evos do need that support, right? Being able to re-proc their effects over and over again would be really nice. So just being able to put more cards under more things as mechanologist would definitely be nice, right? But yeah, so it could potentially be a 2 for 6 that could become a 2 for 10 or a 2 for 14, right? That also could have overpower and not require action point generation. So yeah, Bankbreaker is already kind of scary. But again, when we talk about Evos, right? We have this set. Now, God, they need set names, right? So this is the big mech set, right? So Evo Command Center, Engine Room, Smooth Bore, and Thruster, the military set, right? Either way, these are all your weapon-centered Evos. Now, generally speaking, these didn't make a whole lot of sense to me because, well, legs in particular. Legs are the ones we want to zero on, but we'll go through the other 3 to begin with, right? So you have Command Center, which gives your next weapon hit the ability to draw a card. You have Engine Room that makes your next weapon hit cost 1 less. You have Smoothbore, which is your next weapon gets +1, and then Thrusters, which allows you to attack an additional time with a weapon. So that's a big one. We'll shelve that for now, right? But yeah, so the whole set is catered around weapon usage for mech, but obviously a lot of the mech weapons, either you don't need the extra push, or you can't really use the extra push, right? So yeah, I think the wrench definitely opens these up a bit more. They still need a little something to make them a lot more useful. Again, if you could put more cards underneath them to be able to reproc their effects over and over again, then with the wrench, they seem super scary, right? A discount to the wrench on hit draw, wrench +1, right? And then of course, extra, a thrice hit, if you will, from Evo Thruster. But yeah, so pistol-wise or other weapon-wise that mech does have, we have, again, they're the cards that need action points and don't care about having more charges to attack with, right? Because they are just action attack, steam counter, maybe, action point, maybe, but overall, obviously no use for Evo Thruster. So these are the ones that Evo Thruster could interact with, right? So Enemy Blaster and the Plasma Barrel Shot, their upkeep cost, if you will, or the setup cost, is too hefty, I think, to make Evo Thruster worthwhile. You have Klloo Leveler, but if you're playing Klloo Leveler, you have significantly better Evos to go after, so that still doesn't quite work. You have Banksy, but now that we have Bankbreaker, it is just significantly better, right? Bankbreaker, again, being able to set up with Clamp Press, being able to have those extra things, the proc ability of Overpower and go again, and then again, being able to add a third swing into it every here and there, right? Again, if we can stick more cards under them, is really scary. This is the perfect backbone to me for comboing, right? Because again, the majority of pieces are on board, or you can set them up on board for that big combo turn. Now, obviously, the deck is for Max, and we assume favorable things for Max, but obviously Max is not the only hero that does benefit from this, right? You have OG Dash, right? Although soon to rotate, right? Being able to stick a Clamp Press out from the get-go, right? Having a 1-cost-5 swing, right? On board for the first 2 turns. A 2-cost-10 swing, right? That is nuts, right? Again, action point generation. Not that hard in mech. It is what they're built for. So, yeah, that's scary enough. Which then, of course, leads us to the possibility of something like this with Data. So, with this opening hand, since High Octane isn't actually banned in Blitz, which was actually a surprise when I was building this combo sequence, right? But we can play High Octane, we can pitch our blue, we can then play our Twin Drive to boost to, and of course, as Data, we can find ourselves some items. In the case of Bankbreaker, we can find our Clamp Presses, and we definitely do want to crank them. So 3 action points there, to 4 action points, to then Twin Drive for 5 damage already. So it's 5 damage, so keep that in mind. But, of course, we're not done, right? So we can Klloo Foundry Heart, pitch the other card, hit 2 more items, and yeah, then we can bind it with Cerebellum Processor, which is another, of course, obscene card. But with our excess of 7 action points, why don't we use this perfectly balanced draw, right? So crank our 2 processors, use our 2 processors, and we get ourselves our Evo Thrusters. So, of course, we can equip them since I have the base legs, right? And now with that, we can proc it, and we have 3 charges on our Bankbreaker, and our Bankbreaker has a +4 from the Clamp Press. Now, obviously, we haven't seen what utility will eventually amount to putting cards under Bankbreaker, but generally speaking, I feel like this ability should be usable at least every other turn, so it should be somewhat commonplace. So you could probably stack up enough, unless there's some sort of hard limit, like if it already has a card, you can't put another card under there, but still, even just 1 attack with this setup, right? So starting off, go 7 overpower, again, already done 5, into another 7, into another 7, right? So the insanity there is fully statted out. Bankbreaker is a 3 for 21 with possible overpower, right? That's already insane. Then just in a more commonplace, it's at least a 2 for 6, so average, right? Maybe a 2 for 6 with overpower, a little bit better, or with 1 Clamp Press, a 2 for 10. And that's where it gets a little bit crazy. So I'm very interested to see what they have cooking for Mechanologist all around, right? Because yeah, Crank is something already, right? Action points are still easy peasy. But then you have, cards like Cerebellum Processors, you have all the hyperdrivers in Max. Yeah. Data is very much approaching the would not work in Class Constructed, right? I've always been on the fence about it. I feel like with the 3 intellect, it's fine, because your opponent, generally speaking, has plenty of disruption, right? To really just shake up your 3-card hand. It's not until you actually get the whole stockpile of items that Data becomes obscene, right? And the 40 HP obviously would help you out with that. But with stuff like this, with Cerebellum Processor, it is just insane, right? The fact that Data, whenever you find a Cerebellum Processor, is just a +1 is pretty nutty, and then you still get it for the next turn. But anyway, there we go. What you can do with Bankbreaker so far, right? And yeah, we've seen 2 cards out of the Armory deck, and there has to be a decent chunk more support specifically for this archetype, right? Unless Wrenches is a high seas thing, right? Could be. Anyway, hope you enjoyed. Yeah.